All right, welcome back. Today, you've dropped us right into the thick of it, haven't you?
We have indeed.
We're diving headfirst into the incredibly hot, super competitive Chinese EV market.
Yeah.
And specifically, we're looking at Xiaomi's brand new electric SUV, the YU7.
That's the one. And the source material you gave us, this piece from CarNewsChina, it really nails the big question hanging over this launch.
The price freight.
The price. And how that price fits, or maybe doesn't fit into the absolute frenzy that's going on with car pricing in China right now.
Exactly. So our mission here today, for you listening, is to really unpack the key info from this CarNewsChina article. We want to figure out what Xiaomi is actually doing with the YU7.
Understand the strategy.
Yeah, the strategy, which honestly seems a bit counterintuitive on the surface.
Yeah.
And we need to see what this SUV actually offers, because here's the puzzle, the thing that really caught my eye. China's EV market is in this furious price war. Everyone's slashing prices. But Xiaomi CEO, he comes out and says they are specifically not joining in.
Right.
So how do you launch a brand new SUV in that environment without huge discounts? What's the plan?
It's a bold move, you have to say, and you really can't grasp it without seeing the bigger picture. The article makes it super clear there's a genuinely heated price war happening.
Heated might even be an understatement based on what we've seen lately.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, the source points out that this latest big round of price cuts really kicked off with BYD right around the end of May. And once BYD moved, it was like, boom, dominoes falling. You had major players, Geely, Chery, SAIC, FAW. They all jumped in pretty quick.
Right, launching their own discounts.
Exactly. Big ones, too, even if some were labeled limited time, just trying to keep up, protect their share. So it created this massive downward pressure on prices. Price became like the #1 thing for a lot of buyers.
And into that chaos steps Lei Jun. He's the CEO of Xiaomi Automobile.
Yeah.
And he makes this very public statement. The article quotes it. Xiaomi won't be engaged in price wars. I mean, that feels like turning up to a gunfight and, declaring you'll only use harsh language.
It definitely makes you pause, doesn't it? And naturally, that statement just cranked up the spotlight on what the YU7 would cost, since they didn't announce it at the May 22nd presentation.
Right.
But after that event, the rumor mill started churning. Unofficial sources started throwing out a number, 235,900 yuan.
Which is about $32,750 roughly.
Yeah. And that price, if it had been real, it probably would have looked pretty competitive before this latest wave of deep cuts hit.
Okay, so that was the rumor floating around. But then Lei Jun apparently said something else, something that suggested that rumored price wasn't quite right.
Exactly. He made another comment, a clarification really. He said the YU7 won't be just 20,000 yuan more expensive than their entry-level sedan, the SU7.
Okay, unpack that. Won't be just 20,000 yuan more.
Right. The phrasing is key there. Think about it. If the YU7 was going to be priced at that rumored 235,900 yuan, the difference between it and the base SU7 sedan would likely be somewhere around that 20,000 yuan figure, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less.
Okay, yeah.
So by saying it won't be just that much more, he's pretty clearly signaling that the actual price difference is going to be bigger, significantly bigger than 20K.
Ah, gotcha.
Which points directly to the YU7's final sticker price being, well, higher than that 235,900 yuan rumor.
Okay, I see the logic. So he's managing expectations downwards on the rumor, upwards on the actual price, and that lines up with his no price war stance. He's basically saying, look, we're not even playing in that super low price segment.
Precisely. But here's the next layer. The article also mentions CarNewsChina's own expectation for where the YU7 will land.
Oh.
Yeah, despite likely being priced higher than that initial rumor, they still expect Xiaomi to strategically position the YU7 to undercut the Tesla Model Y in China.
Okay, now that's interesting. That gives us a really important benchmark. What's the Tesla Model Y starting at over there right now?
The Model Y kicks off at 263,500 yuan. So about $36,570 US.
Right.
So the thinking is Xiaomi will price the YU7 somewhere above that, adjusted upwards from the rumor number, but still landing below that Model Y starting price.
Okay.
So see, they're not joining the race to the bottom with the companies doing massive slashes, but they are clearly picking a fight in that very popular segment dominated by the Model Y.
It's like a targeted strike then. Aiming for value against a key competitor, not just being the absolute cheapest car you can buy.
Exactly. It's a middle ground strategy, and it shows just how fast things move. The article notes the final price might not even be locked in until like a day or two before the actual sales launch.
That's wild. Talk about dynamic pricing.
It really is. Shows they're watching the market like hawks, tweaking things right up to the last second, even if they aren't playing the same discount game as everyone else.
Okay, so the pricing strategy is fascinating. Stepping out of the main price war, but still aiming to beat a giant like the Model Y. But for you listening, the big question becomes, what do you actually get for that potentially higher than expected price?
Right.
If they're not competing solely on cost, the car itself must be bringing something compelling to the table. So let's talk specs. What's the YU7 actually packing?
Good question. Because, yeah, if you're asking people to pay a bit more than the heavily discounted stuff, they need to see the value. And the YU7 looks like a pretty substantial vehicle.
Dimensions.
Yeah, dimensions are 999 millimeters long, just under 2 meters wide, 1996 millimeter, and about 1.6 meters tall, 1608 millimeter. And the wheelbase is generous 3,000 millimeters.
So pretty big. Mid-size plus territory.
Yeah, definitely bordering on large SUV territory for sure. And the article breaks down 3 different trim levels.
Okay, let's get into those. Starting with the entry-level model, what are we looking at for power and range there?
All right, the base YU7. It's got a single electric motor, rear-wheel drive. Peak power is 235 kilowatts.
What is this about?
About 315 horsepower, pretty solid. And it uses a 96.3 kilowatt-hour LFP battery pack.
LFP lithium iron phosphate, known for being stable, maybe a bit cheaper.
Exactly. And the range on this base model, honestly, it's impressive, up to 835 kilometers.
Wait, hold on. 835 kilometers. CLTC cycle, I assume.
Yep, CLTC. But still, it's a huge number for a base model SUV of this size.
That really is significant range. Wow. What about acceleration?
Still respectable for its size, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 5.88 seconds. Top speed is 240 kilometers per hour. So, strong numbers for the starting point.
Okay, great range on the base. What happens when you move up to the Pro trim?
So the YU7 Pro, that's where you get dual motors, all-wheel drive.
More power.
Definitely. Combined peak power jumps up quite a bit, 365 kilowatts, which is around 489 horsepower.
Okay, noticeable bump.
Yeah, and that makes it quicker. 0 to 100 kilometer routers to 4.27 seconds. Now, interestingly, the Pro uses the same 96.3 kilowatt-hour LFP battery pack as the base model.
Oh, okay. So same battery, but more power, all-wheel drive. Range must take a bit of a hit.
It does, yeah. With the extra motor and power draw, the CLTC range comes down slightly to 770 kilometers. Still very good, but less than the single motor version.
Right, makes sense. So the Pro is the quicker all-wheel drive option using the same battery tech.
Yeah.
What about the top dog, the YU7 Max?
Ah, the Max. That's where Xiaomi really seems to be flexing its muscles, especially on performance.
How much power are we talking?
Peak output jumps again significantly to 508 kilowatts. That's a massive 681 horsepower.
Whoa.
And to handle that kind of power, they switch up the battery. It gets a larger 101.7 kilowatt-hour ternary NMC pack.
NMC nickel manganese cobalt. Generally more energy dense, better for performance.
That's the thinking, yeah. Likely why they went with it for the top trim. Now, range is 760 kilometers CLTC, so just a hair under the Pro, but you're getting way more performance.
And that performance is?
Honestly, it's supercar territory for an SUV. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in a blistering 3.23 seconds.
3.23. Seriously?
Yeah.
In an SUV this size?
Seriously, and top speed is up to 253 kilometers per hour. It's genuinely quick.
That's incredible. And the source mentioned some other premium bits on the Max too, didn't it? Things you might not expect.
It did, yeah. To kind of justify that Max badge and the performance, it includes features like dual-chamber air suspension.
Okay, for better ride and handling control.
Exactly. And 4-piston Brembo brake calipers, proper performance stopping power. These aren't things you typically find on every EV, especially not mass-market ones. It signals they're positioning the Max as, like, a true performance luxury contender.
Okay, so across the 3 trims, you've got this spectrum. You can go for massive range with the base, step up performance and all-wheel drive with the Pro, or go all out with serious speed and premium hardware in the Max. So pretty comprehensive offering.
It really seems to cover a lot of bases.
And for people in China who are curious, where can they actually go see one right now?
Well, the article says Xiaomi has started putting them on static display, so you can't drive one yet, but you can see it. They're currently in 56 Xiaomi Auto stores, mainly in the big cities: Beijing, Shanghai, Hangzhou, Chengdu. And the plan is to roll them out much wider after the 2025 Greater Bay Auto Show. They're aiming for displays in 92 cities across China eventually. So availability to at least see one is ramping up.
Right. Okay, let's pull all these threads together then. We've got this market context, a fierce price war, deep discounts everywhere.
Yeah, total battleground.
Then you have Xiaomi CEO saying, nope, we're not playing that game.
Standing apart.
We have the expectation that the YU7 price will land somewhere above the initial rumors, but still deliberately undercutting a major competitor, the Tesla Model Y.
A specific strategic slot.
And we've just walked through the specs, impressive range, especially on the base, scaling up to genuinely high performance with premium features on the top trim.
It paints a really interesting picture, doesn't it? Xiaomi is essentially making a bet. They're betting that their brand power, and let's face it, they have a huge loyal following from phones and electronics, that combined with what looks like an appealing design, judging by the photos, and the actual substance, the specs, the features, especially that high-end max trim, they're betting all that is enough to justify a price point that's not rock bottom.
They think people will pay for that package rather than just grabbing the cheapest EV deal available.
Exactly. They're choosing not to compete purely on price. They're trying to carve out that space maybe just above the budget warriors, but still offering compelling value against a benchmark like the Model Y.
Competing on tech, features per dollar, performance per dollar, maybe brand cachet, rather than just the lowest sticker price.
That seems to be the strategy. It relies on you, the consumer, recognizing that total package. The range, the speed, the tech, the looks, the Xiaomi ecosystem perhaps, and feeling is worth paying a bit more for than the deep discount alternatives. Because you see the value compared to rivals in that slightly higher price bracket. They're defining value differently.
Okay, so to wrap this up for you listening today, we've done our deep dive into this CarNewsChina piece on the Xiaomi YU7. We looked at the crazy Chinese EV price war, Xiaomi's surprising decision to sit it out, and what that likely means for the YU7's price, probably higher than rumored, but aiming below the Model Y. And we broke down those specs, showing the range of capabilities from that impressive base model range right up to the max trim's serious performance and features. It shows what Xiaomi is betting on, if not price.
And that leaves us with, I think, a really interesting question for you to mull over. In a market that's getting conditioned to expect big price cuts, can a new player like Xiaomi successfully launch an SUV at a relatively higher price point, banking purely on brand, tech, and features?
Is that a sustainable path?
Right. Is this a smart way to avoid the race to the bottom? Or is it super risky? Could they get squeezed between the discounters below and the established premium brands above? And maybe bigger picture, what does this specific approach tell us about how the Chinese EV market might split in the future? You know, between these high-value, feature-packed segments and the pure budget battleground. It's a massive test for Xiaomi and honestly a fascinating thing to watch for the whole industry.